What is up, guys? I'm back here with another Power Rankings video, this time the last conference that we have not done, the Big 12. And like always, we're going to do it worst to best. So again, let's just get right into it. At number 16, I have Houston. And Houston was pretty much a complete mess last year. They did bring in head coach Willie Fritz from Tulane, which I think is definitely an upgrade. And they have a really solid quarterback in Donovan Smith, but I think he needs to make better decisions with the ball and throw less picks to be better this year. And the receiver group did lose some guys, and they did gain some guys as well through the portal, so we're not really too sure what that room is going to turn out like. But I expect Willie Fritz to target the ground game pretty heavily, and they have some really good backs, but their production numbers will depend on if we see any improvement from the overhauled O-line, which I think is a pretty big question mark for them. On defense, however, Willie Fritz took a lot of players out of the transfer portal. On paper, they have a better unit, which isn't too hard to do since they were so bad last season. With so many transfers, though, there just isn't much skill in trying to predict what they will look like, so I'm not really going to. Overall, I like the Willie Fritz hire a lot, and I think that he will lead the team to a lot of success later on, but this year, I'm not really seeing it. There's just not a lot of bright spots, plenty of holes, and just a ton of question marks. At number 15, I have BYU, and I don't think I have a lot of good things to say about BYU this season. They do have a new quarterback, and he doesn't really have the arm talent that Slovis did, but he does provide more mobility, so that's a plus at least. And the offense around him retains a lot from last season, but the problem is they were pretty mediocre last season, and that's at best. The receivers just didn't make big plays, and the ground game didn't do much either. And if anything, I think the BYU offense may be even worse than it was last season. On defense, the news really isn't much better, just mediocre across the board. But they do have talent at the edge and linebacker positions, so those should be minor strengths for them. And overall, I expect BYU to be pretty unimpressive this year and unexciting. At number 14, I have the Cincinnati Bearcats. And offensively, I expect Cincinnati to look pretty similar to last year. Pretty hit or miss, excellent on the ground, but pretty mediocre through the air. They have a great offensive line and great running backs and a new mobile quarterback, so the rushing numbers should look good. And they did add some receiver talent through the portal, but I really doubt they're going to be good enough to cause a switch in play style for the Bearcats. Defensively is where I think most of the questions arise. They were flat out bad last year on that side of the ball, but they do bring in a lot of transfers, some of whom should make an immediate impact, and they brought back elite defensive tackle Dante Corleone. Overall, I expect them to be better defensively and pretty much the same offensively. At number 13, I have the Baylor Bears. And offensively, I do expect improvement from them. They bring in a really solid offensive coordinator paired with a playmaker quarterback from Toledo. And I expect Cincinnati to look pretty similar to last year. Pretty hit or miss, excellent on the ground, but pretty mediocre through the air. They have a great offensive line and great running backs and a new mobile quarterback. So the rushing numbers should look good. And they did add some receiver talent through the portal, but I really doubt they're going to be good enough to cause a switch in play style for the Bearcats. So the guys that started there last year are starting again this year. On defense, the Bears were the worst in the Big 12 last season. And while I do expect improvement, especially at linebacker, I just don't see Baylor's defense making a huge leap, or at least a big enough leap to put them any higher on this list. I feel like they're still going to have issues generating pressure and breaking up big plays. Basically, Baylor has a lot of improving to do from being the worst in the conference in several areas. I expect both sides of the ball to improve, but I don't think it's going to be enough to put them any higher. And at number 12, I have the Arizona State Sun Devils, and they had a pretty terrible season last year despite having a great staff and great players, but the injury bug just hit them and caused all kinds of problems. And this is a new year, and injury is unpredictable as always. So what is this team going to look like going into this season? Well, at quarterback, they look to start a redshirt freshman, Sam Leavitt. Hope I'm saying that right. I think he's going to be good at Arizona State, but I expect him to be pretty sloppy, at least early in the season. And the offense around him doesn't look great either. The receiver room got hit by the transfer portal, and the running back room is solid but not elite. And their offensive line was very disappointing last year, and I expect similar results this year. On defense, though, the news is definitely better, and they look to be plenty capable. Their secondary should be a strength for the team, especially at safety. They'll be stronger at linebacker, and while their pass rush isn't elite, they do still have potential at that position. Overall, they should have a good defense, but the offense, there's just too many questions there for them to be great, in my opinion. At number 11, I have the Colorado Buffaloes. And the Colorado experiment is in year 2 with Deion Sanders, and I'm not entirely sure how I feel about the approach that they're taking. As you probably know, Deion Sanders has been pretty unconventional in the way that he's handled Colorado. His approach has basically been take a lot out of the transfer portal and hope it works out. And that's really no different this year, but they lost a lot and gained a lot. And they do still have standout players who most know, Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter, and those two players should carry them the distance at their respective roles. Shedeur is a Heisman contender at quarterback, and Travis Hunter plays both sides of the ball very, very well at receiver and cornerback, also a potential Heisman contender. The rest of the offense is in wait-and-see mode, though. Colorado had a terrible offensive line last season, and only time will tell if this year's unit is going to be any better, as it is almost entirely made up of transfers. So we'll see if they can perform any better. One thing I do expect to change a bit, though, is the style of ball Colorado plays, especially considering they brought in a new offensive coordinator. That should make them a bit more dimensional if there is new pieces in the running back room that pan out. And on defense, they were pretty bad last year, but there were some areas that shined, particularly in the secondary, and that should be a bright spot for this team this season as well. I do have concerns about the defensive line, though, and I don't think they're going to be able to stop much on the ground or generate much pressure. Overall, I expect a marginally better season for the Buffaloes. Cracking our top 10, I have the TCU Horned Frogs, and they had a mighty fall last season coming off of a national championship appearance the year before. And while I definitely don't expect them to reach those heights again anytime soon, I do think this team should at least be good enough to make a bowl game. Maybe. I do believe in Sonny Dykes, and there's plenty of reason for the team to have hope. They have a solid 1-2 punch at running back, and their offensive line is laden with transfers, although the transfers that they have should be really good, so expect a more productive run game. And honestly, they should have a great receiving core as well, with a mix of returners and standout transfer in Eric McAllister. I am a bit concerned about their quarterback situation, though. Josh Hoover can throw the ball well, but does have turnover concerns that need to be cleaned up. The Achilles heel for this team looks to be defense, though, outside of their outstanding linebacker core. The line is just okay, and the secondary is pretty vulnerable. They will have trouble stopping the run and the pass, which is not really a great combo. Overall, I expect a really solid offense, but I'm unsure if they will be able to make up for their defensive woes. At number 9, I have Texas Tech, the Red Raiders, and Texas Tech generated a lot of hype last year, and they just under-delivered. But they do have some really solid players that may be able to cash in on that hype this season. They were underwhelming through the air last year, but this year there is a new starter in town, and he does not provide a mobile threat, but he is solid through the air. And the receivers are there despite having some guys leave. There's nobody in that room that's really elite. It's not really the best group, but it should be at least pretty good. And if the pass game underdelivers again, at least they do have a monster running back that will definitely not disappoint behind a great offensive line. On defense, they are pretty much mediocre across the board in the secondary and up front. Overall, better offensively, relatively the same defensively. And at number 8, I have Arizona, the Wildcats, and they lost their head coach, but they did bring in a great one to replace him, and they ended up retaining their two most important players, Fafita at quarterback and McMillan at wide receiver. Fafita does not run, but he's very accurate and he does not make mistakes, which could be really huge for Arizona going into this season. And McMillan isn't the only pass-catching playmaker for Arizona, as they do have several high-quality guys. The offensive line should be pretty good, but not great, and I expect the same from the running back room. On defense, there are a ton of transfers, especially along the line, and while I do have concerns about replacing so much with transfers, they got some really good guys that should definitely be improvements for the team. They have some excellent linebackers, and there's lots of love in the secondary as well. Overall, I expect them to be slightly worse than last year just because there's new staff and a ton of new elsewhere. I think a lot of transfers are going to have high upside, but it's hard to portal in so much and have it all gel well. At number 7, I have West Virginia. And West Virginia looked to be on a downward trend before last season where they really turned it up. And I think they're going to be even better this year. They have an incredible offensive line, a really solid rushing attack, and a dual threat quarterback. At a receiver, they have some pretty solid options as well, but I expect this to be a run-first team for sure. On defense, I see a lot of bright spots as well. They are great at generating pressure, and the secondary is really good. They did lose their leading tackler in the linebacker room, but the guys they have should definitely be decent enough, and overall, West Virginia could be a dangerous team this season. At number 6, I have the UCF Knights, and I think you should watch out for UCF because they may be one of the most underrated teams in the country this season. They have a great coaching staff, and they just brought in KJ Jefferson from Arkansas at quarterback, who's definitely a dual threat kind of guy, and he's really good at it. The running backs that led the Knights to the 4th best ground attack in the country are back with a few additions. The offensive line will look a bit different, but I definitely still expect them to be a great front. And the biggest question I have for the Knights this season are the receivers. They lost their best pass catcher, and I have my doubts as to whether the guys that they do have are able to step up enough to make them dangerous through the air. Defensively, transfers are everywhere, and hopefully they can help UCF stop the run because they definitely could not do that last year. Assuming there isn't an issue with the transfers gelling, though, they should be improved across the board. And they look to have an improved defensive line, and their new linebacker core, while new for the Knights, are very experienced, and the secondary should be great as well. Overall, UCF should surprise a lot of people. They could be really dangerous if the defensive transfers pan out and the receivers play well. Number 5, I have Iowa State, the Cyclones. And Iowa State is a bit of a dark horse candidate for me in the Big 12. They have a dangerous quarterback in Rocco Becht, who is severely underrated, an improved O-line, a strong receiving core, and they have an excellent running back. Although they are a bit thin there, so they may have to rely on him and hope that the injury bug does not hit. They are by no means elite, but I see no real glaring offensive weaknesses. On defense, Iowa State looks to be really good as well, although there are some minor concerns. They look to be really solid along the defensive line, and I doubt too many teams will find success against them running the ball. And that extends to the linebacker room as well. They're going to be really strong, and in the secondary, they have some stars and a ton of experience, especially at safety. They do need some players to step up at corner, and I have some minor concerns about their ability to generate pressure, but overall, a great unit. Iowa State is loaded, and they don't want you to know it. At number 4, I have Kansas State. Avery Johnson is now the full-time starter for the Wildcats, and let me warn you, he is a dog. He can run the rock very effectively, and while he may need to work on his accuracy, I expect that will be cleaned up when we see him in the fall after a few starts. And there is a lot of turnover offensively, especially at the line, but Kansas State is well known for cracking out strong lines, so I'm not really too worried, and the transfer portal also helps. I do have some questions about the wide receiver room. They have guys with plenty of potential, but most of them have not lived up to that potential yet. But where they may lack through the air, they make up for on the ground. They should have a dangerous running game, pairing really solid backs with a mobile quarterback. On defense, the Wildcats should be solid. They have a lot of high-level talent on the back end. It'll be a tough secondary to pass on, especially since the linebacker room should be even better than they were last season. They have a pretty similar problem to Kansas, though, and I'll talk about them in a second. They don't have a great pass rush. And speaking of Kansas, I have Kansas at number 3. Jalen Daniels is one of my favorite quarterbacks to watch when he's healthy, and he's back for the Jayhawks. He can run very effectively, and he can throw very effectively. But again, health is his biggest weakness since he can't seem to go long without injuries. Daniels has a loaded receiver room to throw to as well, and the running back room is not too shabby either. The main question for the Jayhawks is the offensive line. I don't think the line will be bad, but I don't think it's going to be a strength either. On defense, Kansas made strides last year, and while they do retain high-level talent, they are losing some as well. They should be great in the secondary, but I have concerns at the linebacker position and the pass rushing ability of this defense. They have some decent guys up front that can jam the run, but getting pressure may continue to be a problem for the Jayhawks. And at number 2, I have the Utah Utes, and Utah joins the Big 12 as an immediate favorite. And there's pretty good reason for that. They are known for being a very physical team that just gets things done without making mistakes. They struggled with injury last year, though, but the stars they have are back and ready to make a difference, including their star quarterback, Cam Rising. And when healthy, Rising was incredible. He has a great arm, and he makes really good decisions with the ball, but can he stay healthy and get back to his former glory after such a bad injury? We'll have to wait and see. Luckily, he does have solid receivers to get the ball to, which definitely should help, but I do have minor worries about the offensive line. The expectation is that Utah will be great up front because that's pretty much their identity, and I have no doubt that they're going to be able to squeeze everything that they can out of the guys that they have and reload, but it's worth noting that there are not a lot of returning players there. They should have a strong 1-2 punch at running back, though, so there are plenty of options for the Utes offensively. On defense, there are a lot of bright spots for Utah. The line should be incredible with stopping the run and pass rushing ability. They have a strong core of linebackers. They have a solid secondary despite not being able to force many interceptions. And Utah is just solid all around and should perform very well in their first year in the Big 12. And at number 1 at the top of the Big 12, I have the Oklahoma State Cowboys. Oklahoma State has the second highest returning production percentage in the country. They are full of experienced players and can do real damage. The star of the show at Oklahoma State is their running back, Ollie Gordon, who I believe to be the best running back in the nation. He's one of the big reasons I have them so high on this list. And if that was not enough, he's paired with one of the best offensive lines in the nation, meaning big yards on the ground and maximum protection for veteran quarterback Alan Bowman. And Bowman also has some incredible receivers to throw to. They seem to be a team that can score in a variety of ways. I really don't see a weakness for the Cowboys offense. On defense, there are a few more weaknesses. They have a fantastic linebacker room, though, and playmakers in that secondary, but they should be weak along the line. They should be okay in pass rush, but I think they're going to struggle against the run. Overall, this team looks like it can score a lot and hold its own on defense at least. So that's why I have them at number 1. And that's going to do it, guys. That's my Big 12 power rankings. And yeah, this is the last conference. So stay tuned to see what I have planned next. And I hope you guys liked this video. If you did, please like, comment, and subscribe. It means a lot. And I really appreciate you guys being here. So again, thank you guys so much. And I will see you guys in the next video.